All right, Karl, welcome to the Vertical SaaS podcast. Thanks for joining
Gavin,
me.
thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, and remind me where you're calling in from again.
Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Love
Yeah.
it. The hub of innovation at the moment. So much
It
going on
re-
there.
it really has become one of the tech capitals of the world, I think.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks again, man, for giving up the time. I know you're a busy man. I've been looking forward to this for a number of reasons. You know, you're my interest in legal tech, and we had a really good discussion on the kind of pre-podcast call. You're one of those, how would I say it, maybe rare breeds. You're a solicitor at heart. You've always practiced in the legal world, but you're also have a real bias for action when it comes to technology adoption, and have a real mind for how technology can solve problems for industries. So would be great to start off if you could introduce for the listeners that don't know you and don't know who Skribe AI are, which is your legal tech company. And it'd be great to hear a little bit about your journey, why you got into law, going all the way back to where you are now, founded your own law firm, founded your own legal tech. Yeah, it'd be great to hear it.
Yeah, well, I don't want to give a long narrative, so I'll give you bits and pieces, and then you can tell me where you want to dive deeper. So Karl Seelbach grew up in a small town in northeast Texas, rural part of Texas called Henderson, on a 100-acre cattle ranch. And so was exposed to technology at a pretty young age. I was very fortunate to kind of be one of these kids who grew up in the, I guess, late 80s, early 90s, and had the benefit of a parent who got a family computer. And I remember dialing in through the old modems and hearing all the crazy noises of dial-up internet back in the day, but just really always embraced technology and just loved figuring out how software could work and help us improve the way that we operate. And so had a fairly straight path after growing up in Northeast Texas. I went to Stephen F. Austin for undergraduate. I'd been exposed to the world of law through my dad. And so my dad is a safety engineer, and he's done expert witness work in personal injury cases for probably over 40 years now. And so had been exposed to that. So when I went to college, I already had an interest in law, and in particularly personal injury law, through meeting a lot of the attorneys that my dad worked with. And so that's kind of what sparked my interest. And then after undergrad, went straight to law school. So fairly straight path in the early years, from growing up in a small town to deciding I wanted to go to law school.
Yeah, and then that's where it got probably not so traditional. And that's the part that I'm interested in. You're advising tech companies, you're founding tech companies. Like, talk to us about the part where you really kind of put that into a more business context, that passion for technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably, when I think back to, aside from consumer tech and being kind of always an early adopter with technology in general, I remember when streaming first came out, and Netflix had partnered with Roku as kind of the first time you could stream Netflix instead of doing the old mail-in, DVD model. And I bought the very first one, and I told my wife, this is the future of how we watch, TV, how we watch movies. And she thought I was crazy, and the catalog, the selection on Netflix back then was horrible. But, eventually it improved more and more and more. And when I think about my entry into practicing law, I can think of a couple of very similar examples where I was a brand new baby lawyer, as they say, first year associate at a law firm, and I walked in the door and tried to convince my legal secretary, who was probably in her mid-60s, that my files needed to be paperless, and that we were going to, instead of managing all these documents in a file folder, we were just going to use this new document management system that the law firm had rolled out and just save everything electronically. And you would have thought I was from a different planet, and trying to explain the benefits of that to this.
What year was that?
Yeah, so that was 2006.
2006.
Almost 20 years ago. Almost 20 years ago. And I remember a similar conversation. So finally, the compromise was, let's do it on a new case so you don't have to go scan old files, and let's see how it works. And we did it on one case, a new case that came in. And as I suspected, she loved it. And she figured out how convenient it was to have the file at your fingertips. And so that was just, kind of one anecdotal situation where, I was trying to get the team to embrace technology in a profession that sometimes is slow to adopt new technologies. But eventually I started taking a lot of depositions as a litigator, and I'm still a litigator today. I'm the managing partner of a law firm in Austin. We've got about almost 30 employees, 15 of which are attorneys, and we defend large employers, a lot of Fortune 500 companies in personal injury cases across the entire state of Texas. So it's a very interesting docket. We have retail clients, restaurant, healthcare, shipping and logistics, a lot of household brands that places you shop and eat. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of great clients. We enjoy our work. But as I was doing, when I first started, if you rewind almost 20 years now, when I was first starting, I was doing a lot of depositions, which back then involved driving or flying to wherever the deposition was going to be held. For your listeners who may have never seen a deposition or may not know exactly what a deposition is essentially a sworn question and answer session where a witness shows up with the attorneys, and that person is questioned under oath in the case to give answers, whatever the attorney wants to ask within reason. Usually it's for fact investigation to try to figure out what happened, the who, what, when, and where details of a case, particularly in a personal injury case. And I just kind of thought when I started going to these depositions, wow, this is a very slow process. We have a stenography machine that was invented in the 1800s. It looks like a really funky looking keyboard that doesn't have any letters on it, with a stenographer typing everything that's said. And we have a videographer showing up with video equipment that looked like it was used to film the movie Jaws, and to set up this elaborate backdrop and shoot this video. How much does all this cost? And when do I actually get a copy of the deposition that I took today? And what I realized was it costs a lot of money, and it usually takes weeks or a month or more to get a copy of the deposition unless you're willing to pay rush fees to get it faster. So that kind of inspired me to take a closer look at how could we modernize that process? What if we built something new to try to really speed up that entire testimony capture and make it easier and more cost effective for attorneys and their clients?
And then that takes you on to Skribe AI.
Not at first. It took a while because Tom Irby, my co-founder at Skribe, and I had talked about this idea for almost 10 years. And we had a lot of...
Is he a solicitor as well?
Yeah, he's not actually. Tom is not an attorney. He's just a serial entrepreneur. He actually used to be a business coach of mine. He's done some advising in the past years. But Tom used to own a court reporting business. He had bought a court reporting business with the intent of growing it, which he did. And then he kept it, as he likes to say, just long enough to figure out that this entire industry was ripe for disruption. And so he sold the court reporting company to one of the largest court reporting companies in the world, and then stayed on through his non-compete and his buyout period, and then ultimately joined forces with me. But we back a napkin this idea for Skribe, and that's Skribe with a K for your listeners, several times, and talked about, well, is it like a marketplace for court reporters where you kind of leverage software and let the attorneys hire the court reporters directly without the middleman to bring the cost down, and then leverage software to speed up the delivery? We decided that didn't feel right. And ultimately, we kind of reconnected after COVID hit, and the business of taking depositions, which used to take place at law firm conference rooms primarily, went to Zoom. And all these depositions were now taking place on video conference. And so that really opened the door to a new way of thinking, and also gave us a lane, an opening to what if we could attack this without sending a videographer in person, without hiring a stenographer to go to the event. What if we could just do it with software and monitor the entire proceeding with a certified notary to swear in the witness and make sure that there's no technical glitches in the process?
And we spoke about that as well, and on a previous call, which I'll love to kind of dig into on this podcast. Where it's headed, legal tech, and what was that catalyst moment. And look, I think for a lot of industries, COVID was a huge accelerator. But certainly for the legal industry, when you think about that, in-person testimonials, everything that happens in the legal industry is in court, it's in office, none of it's been ever on that side of the fence. So you saw the opportunity, and it's been going well. How's the journey been since founding? So it founded when? How long ago now?
I believe we started in 2022.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
So started in 2022. We launched the product in May of 2023, and we're just a little over a year in of actually having a product in the market. And so, yeah, it's been going really well. I mean, one thing I've learned firsthand, it always takes a little longer than you think it's going to take. It always costs a little more than you think it's going to cost to build a company, to build software. But I'm extremely proud of the team and the progress that we have made. And, we still got a long way to go, but we just had a really big vote of confidence from a pretty prominent legal tech investor called the Legal Tech Fund, TLTF. Yeah. So that announcement just came out recently. And so that's basically we're really excited to have their financial commitment, but we're also thrilled just to have their vote of confidence and their support. And they have an extremely impressive network and are able to open pretty much any door within the legal tech market. So we're excited to have them as a partner, and hopefully I think we'll be able to turn that into something big in the coming 6 to 12 months.
And with that, that's also the second bit of fundraising in the last 12 months. Because you've had quite a recent raise before that, so clearly a lot of traction. How big is the business now? How many people have you scaled it to?
From an employee standpoint, I think we're at about 10 to 12. We have a couple of part-timers and contractors involved as well. From kind of a deposition volume standpoint, we've done almost 1,000 depositions at this point across 15 states. We kind of have two halves of the business, and one thing that I meant to say earlier. So Skribe is not only looking to modernize the way that attorneys and their clients capture testimony, live testimony, we are also trying to modernize the way that attorneys analyze audio and video evidence. So any deposition, any audio and video evidence, an attorney or their team member can take and upload it into Skribe, and Skribe will leverage AI, create a transcript of that audio and video file, and then let the attorney and their team actually chat with the deposition itself. And it does more than just provide text answers and analysis. It also creates synced video clips that support the answer. So, you think about it from an attorney standpoint, what used to, if I needed to refresh my memory on what happened in a deposition, or I was getting ready for trial, like one of my trial teams is getting ready for a trial next week that starts on Monday in Williamson County, they're going to have to go through, well, they're using Skribe, so they'll be able to do it faster. But in the old days, before Skribe launched, they would have needed to go through and really pinpoint and maybe keyword search, if they're lucky, what they're looking for in a particular deposition, and then hire a vendor or find someone on the team that has the right software to be able to go in to the video file and then create a video clip of the corresponding testimony. With Skribe, they can just prompt and ask the question in the Skribe web application. So they're able to get answers to the questions. Hey, what did the witness say about prior back pain? What did the witness say about the cause of the injury? What did the witness say about whatever they want to ask? They can ask it, and AI will analyze the entire deposition, provide an answer, and then provide a synced video clip of where the witness testified about that topic.
Yeah. And how much time and money is this saving in comparison pre-Skribe to now, people that use Skribe? I mean, how many hours, days, months are you saving people here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So two different halves of the business, right? One is just the analysis tool. So there we're talking about taking something that would have taken, we had one attorney tell us it would have taken me 5 to 6 hours to analyze this deposition at a cost of, $300 an hour. And I can now, to my client, and now I can do it in, 15 to 30 minutes using the tool. On the Skribe live side of the house, which is, again, intended to be a modern way to capture testimony, take depositions, other things like that. It's about a 60 to 70% cost saving. So based on the analysis that we've done, most court reporting agencies charge about $800 to $1,000 per hour of testimony to video record, and transcribe a deposition and sync those two things together. Skribe's price is $349 per record hour. So it's about a 60 to 70% cost savings, and we deliver a same-day video synced record. Within about an hour to two of the event, you can jump in and start reading it, clipping it, AI chatting with it. And then within 5 days, we deliver the final transcript, which in court reporting world is extremely fast. And that final transcript is legally formatted, professionally proofread. Any errors by the software are corrected as a part of that human review process. So we have humans in the loop in two different spots. One is a certified notary supervises the live events, so the deposition events. They swear in the witness, they provide technical support, they help them make sure the attorneys know how to use the software. And then on the back end of the deposition, the transcripts get professionally proofread by professional transcriptionists and then legally formatted.
And when you talk about, $300 an hour for 6 hours is what it was taking that person. I remember when I was doing the same thing, I was just like a legal assistant, but I was sitting reviewing a 300-page document, and having to spot the spelling errors in it, and and it was baffling to me at the time, and that was only 7-8 years ago, So, but do you think because it's all about billing per hour, I think generally speaking, for hundreds of years, it's all been about the law firm and how much money they can make off the client, really, because it's their expertise. But that shift seems like, you've raised funds, you've got this legaltech governing body backing you. Law firms are adopting it, they're loving it, they're loving saving their clients' money. Where do you think the mindset changes came? Is it because they can then get more clients and service more clients quicker? Is the penny dropped? Or?
Well, I think I would say the mindset hasn't changed for everyone, right? I tend to be very candid and transparent anytime I'm talking about a market and assessing a market. I think we have two different mindsets here that help. Three things have really helped expedite adoption across legal tech in all sorts of ways. One, COVID really forced the industry to rethink how we use technology. The Zoom had a big impact, but other, working remotely or hybrid has had a big impact on leveraging software to make that process smoother and seamer for teams to work together when they're not in the same place. So that has had an impact. Two, a lot of tools, including Skribe, are also sold to plaintiffs' attorneys. And what I mean by that is a lot of times not always, but a lot of plaintiffs' attorneys, particularly in the personal injury market, they don't bill by the hour. They get a contingent fee, which means you may have seen the advertising or heard about the advertising here in the States, where we don't pay and you don't pay unless we win. No fee for us unless we win. That's right. And so the point there is they are looking to be extremely efficient because they are not getting paid by the hour. They're just getting paid a percentage of the ultimate recovery in the case. So they actually have an incentive. There's a balance here because they still want to do a quality job for their clients, but they have an incentive to minimize the amount of time spent on a file, just from a pure how many files can we turn, right? Like think of it almost like inventory. How many files can my law firm handle? What's the capacity of each attorney? The more software tools I put in their hands to where they can be extremely efficient, that 6 hours of savings, that 10 hours of savings, all those savings begin to add up. And the cumulative effect of that is they can turn their inventory faster. So that's the second point, would be that the plaintiffs' lawyers tend to be very focused on optimizing efficiencies in their firms. The third point that I was going to make is I think great lawyers, and I think particularly great rainmakers, people that bring in business at law firms, know that churning a file is not the way to keep a client happy or get more clients. There's plenty of legal work out there, and I've found in my career the best way to impress a client is to get them out of the case as fast as possible. And so I've found that clients are really pleased when you're thinking about how am I going to mitigate their exposure. I do defense work, primarily personal injury. How am I going to mitigate their exposure, and what is the quickest path from A to B to get this case resolved? Whether that's through mediation, whether it's through summary judgment, whether it's through trial, what's the quickest path to get there? And I think the attorneys that think about it like that and focus less on how many hours are we billing to this case, just what's the best possible job we can do for this client, those are the types of attorneys that are going to be open to embracing technology to help speed things up. And I think we're already seeing it. I know that at my firm, we're testing a couple of different tools to implement beyond just Scribe, but also for generative AI and drafting things. It's a tip of the iceberg moment. I gave a presentation in San Antonio. I also gave one in Austin just within the last 3 months. And when I asked the people in the room to raise their hand if they had ever used AI, quite a few hands went up. A lot of people have used ChatGPT and things like it. But when I asked the attorneys to raise their hand if they're using some form of generative AI in their law firm, it was very few hands that went up. So I think we are still in the education phase and kind of the early growth phase of using and leveraging AI in law firms. But I think it's going to be a hockey stick curve. Like once people start, it's going to accelerate pretty fast. But I think we're still early right now.
And I guess off the back of that, like where do you kind of think, because you've got quite a broad lens, clearly, where do you think the gaps are still in the legal industry, or where, probably a better question is, where can kind of technologies like AI and Gen AI and general emerging tech, where can they plug in and still add huge value for not just plaintiffs and solicitors, etc., but from the other side, kind of almost a B2B2C model. Where is the huge value add, do you think, in the next kind of 3 to 5 years? Do you have a kind of vision of that?
Well, I'm curious so let me make sure I understand your question. Are you thinking about it more from the standpoint of the types of software that law firms will use to be more efficient in the way we deliver legal services, or are you thinking about it more from the angle of how software could potentially impact businesses themselves and whether they even need to hire outside counsel?
Both. Yeah.
Both. Okay.
I think that piece there, the embedded model, like what we're seeing in other industries, like again, to go back to my experience in the last couple of years in insurtech, you see that embedded piece coming in more and more, and I do think there's a strong play there. But of course, from a data and security aspect, it's quite a treacherous area to innovate in. But anyway.
Yeah, so I'll take them in reverse then, and I'll pontificate, if that's okay, on how companies may be able to use AI and what that could look like in 5 years or 10 years or maybe less, maybe more. Probably not more, probably less. So I'll speak to what I know, which is because that's all I should do, right? I know personal injury law pretty well. I've been doing it for almost 20 years. I've also done real estate litigation, financial services litigation, and some other construction litigation. But I primarily do personal injury. So when I think about how could software and how could AI potentially benefit companies and insurance companies in the way that they manage claims, keep in mind, I only see a very small percentage of the claims, right? I see the litigated claims, which means a lawsuit has been filed on the claim. But I talk to my clients all the time. I've been to their outside counsel meetings at their headquarters. I understand the types of the thousands of claims that they're managing on a monthly basis, some of them tens of thousands of claims that they're managing. And I think that there is absolutely still a gap, and it's going to be similar to what I describe on the law firm side. I think there are several lanes where software could help companies do a better job in assessing risk and exposure, in speeding up the resolution of claims, and probably in just getting a better overall outcome. And one is as simple as AI-assisted claims interviews. Some of these claims adjusters are amazing. I work with some of them. Some of them aren't. And maybe that's because they haven't been trained properly. Maybe that's because they are young and maybe just not experienced yet. But if you could introduce the concept of an AI assist in the questioning of claimants. So think your property damage claim, your injury claim, someone calls it in to report the incident. That tends to be the most pure, unadulterated version of events before they've hired an attorney usually. So your opportunity to get a really high quality recorded statement of exactly what happened and ask the right questions that is your one shot most of the time. And I think leveraging AI, and I've talked about this a little bit with my team at Skribe, but leveraging AI in a way that those adjusters would know what questions to ask, what follow-up questions to ask, could be a place that's ripe for opportunity. Another is just handling all the documents, right? The medical records, all of the claim-related file documents. It kind of synergizing those things into a very easy to digest timeline, eventually applying analytics to recommend settlement amounts or recommend, likely outcomes based on past claims or past litigated files. The possibilities are kind of endless. The question becomes, you want a human in the loop, and you don't want to rely on the software for everything, because I think that could lead us down a dangerous path potentially. But that's where I see, for me in the personal injury world, that's where I see a couple of major opportunities would be around improving the quality of the claims interviews using software, and then also digesting all of the data and all the documents in a way that you can very easily get a timeline, very easily query against it, and then begin to apply some analytics against it so you can project outcomes, or at least provide suggested, hey, here's what we think the value of this claim is, and here's what you may want to consider settling it for. So I think we're probably not too far off from that.
It's just balancing the kind of the empathy of the human in the loop in technology in such a critical time for a person in a personal injury case, or whatever it may be. It's trying to get that balance right between the tech and the human.
Yeah, and I think the same thing's true on the law firm side for us. We still, I would say probably 99% of firms that do what we do, probably 99.9%, are still doing things in a fairly manual way when it comes to the way we get the file materials from the client, whether it's the insurance company or whether it's directly from the client themselves. How we go about organizing those files, how we go about generating timelines of key events, how we go about drafting the first drafts of the pleadings and the discovery, and all of those things. Every piece along that journey, AI could be used to help accelerate, probably formalize it and systemize it in a way where you get a more consistent level of quality. Because I'm very big on creating systems and standard operating procedures at my firm. In fact, sometimes the team likes to ridicule me a little bit about how big the SOP document has gotten that I've drafted over the last 9-10 years. But the reason that I do that is I want my clients to get a very consistent level of quality in the service, whether I'm on the case or not. I want them to have a very similar feel of the way the communication comes across, the way we're reporting, the timeliness of it, the content of it. And I think with AI assisting, not taking it over, but assisting, you can begin to develop processes and tailor those processes in a way where you do kind of level up your entire company's game. Like the quality of the output goes up as you begin to train it on the way you want things to be done. And I think personalized AI in particular for companies, larger firms in particular, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds, because a lot of these firms are sitting on a treasure trove of information, of data, of forms, of pleadings and everything from all these prior cases, but they haven't really tapped into that resource yet. And I think the first company that can really crack that and do it well will be very successful in the legal industry.
How do you think they do it? How do you think they would do it well, though?
What do I think the key is to doing it well?
Yeah.
Make it super simple to use. Yeah. I think that sometimes tech companies will underestimate, and one of the things you asked me before the call was, what are some of the challenges that you've faced? And I tell the team, you've got to remember, everybody on our team is a techie at Skribe. Right, we're more like early adopter mindset. We know how to use the shortcuts on our keyboard. We're very tech literate. Like, we know how to use technology by and large. Your average legal user doesn't, and you have people who, like, literally, I had to record a screen share for my team to show them, here's how simple it is to use Skribe to chat with your transcript. Here's sample questions that you can ask, that you can prompt to the AI chat to get a response. And I think that a lot of tech companies underestimate the training and the education that needs to go into successfully rolling out a software solution for a legal user. And you've really got to, like, I hate to use the word dumb it down, because these people aren't dumb people. They're just not necessarily.
They're just unsophisticated when it comes
When
to
it
technology.
comes to exactly, when it comes to technology, that's right. And so making sure that the user interface, that the training or opportunities, that the support team is there ready to help them, guide them through the process. I think
It's that culture, it's that kind of change in management piece that comes into play. You know, almost from a kind of consultative. You know, you can provide them with the demos, you can show them a screen share, but sometimes you kind of do. It sounds like you need to hold their hand a little bit and almost consult with them in the early days, and really get that mindset shift.
I think that's right. I think that's a challenge. And Skribe even has that challenge today. One of the things that we're actually right now in the process of launching is a lot more webinars where either me or someone else on the team goes through and explains in a way that hopefully is entertaining how to use what we built, and kind of gives them real life use cases, and also covers some of the rules around the use of technology and the use of generative AI. There's ethics rules that are implicated, all those types of things, and really educate the user, show them, like, for example, with Skribe, you know, you can take a video clip of a deposition and you can actually put video in your legal brief using the hyperlink video function. And I remember the first time I showed that to a few litigators in my network, and they were like, holy shit, man, I've never seen anybody put a video in a brief. I mean, briefs have always been these stale, documents for years, and you're putting interactive, clickable video frames to where the judge or the staff attorney can actually watch the testimony that on the key point that you're trying to make. That's amazing. That's awesome. And I think I kind of underestimate sometimes that there's so many people that still haven't even seen that, don't know that it's possible. So education is set to answer your question about who would be able to solve that problem that I described and do it well. It's going to be the company that is the best at making the user interface dead simple to use, and that can educate and guide and kind of white glove that law firm user.
Yeah. And going back to the other point, the opportunity for embedded legal services or virtual law firms or virtual lawyers and SaaS platforms, I think is significant. But when I say that, it probably makes people that are studying law quite nervous coming into the industry. And then I think there's a big question around talent and a lack of talent to be steering people away, because but I don't think for 1 minute an AI lawyer can represent the cases that you represent, Karl. But in Scotland, for example, there's cases or things that happen that mean you're strictly liable. So if you get caught doing a 40 and a 30, it's £100 fine and 3 points, right? There's no two ways about it. But you can maybe mitigate or minimise the sentence or the whatever is put upon you. And I think there's definitely a play to just have an AI agent doing those really basic, low-level legal cases. But yeah, I'm really interested by that, because that's the bit that I find particularly quite exciting. The bit that affects the consumer, the person that needs business. B2B we've talked about, but this side of things I find quite interesting.
I think that we're at a crossroads in a lot of industries, and I think the current strike by all of the port workers across the U.S. right now, the longshoremen. One of the terms that they're really hell-bent on negotiating is into their contracts is that their jobs won't be replaced through automation or AI. We'll see if they're able to ultimately negotiate that or not. The reason I even bring that up in response to your question is I think I would be misleading or perhaps misinforming your audience if I didn't acknowledge that AI is absolutely going to have a very major impact on employment in the legal market, probably within the next 5 years. I think we're going to first see it in a couple of ways as software companies get better at delivering AI-assisted tools, whether that's an AI paralegal or AI associate, whatever you want to call it. The need to hire new people, additional people, is going to drop. And that's going to have
As in lawyers.
Yeah, as in lawyers and paralegals and legal assistants, all the above. And I would say the ones most ripe for disruption are the reverse order. So legal assistants first, sometimes called secretaries,
Yeah.
paralegals next, and then associate attorneys. And then the partner attorneys, I think, are safe because they're the ones that have the client relationships. That's not to say that all the people in that chain are at risk of losing their jobs. That's not my.
That's what I was going to ask. So those people that are at risk, because exactly that, the people with the relationships are never going to get replaced. But what about the people that don't have the relationships, that still have a passion for law, that still want to, use the technology? Like,
I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're certainly not at risk today of being
not today, yeah, of course.
replaced. But I think that you've got to think about it bigger picture. What's the effect if thousands of law firms, instead of needing to hire 5 paralegals, now they only need to hire 1 paralegal because the software that they're utilizing is so sophisticated, they just don't need to hire as many people. That effectively is going to mean that the job market for that type of job is going to shrink. And so there are going to be more competition and less opportunities for some of those roles. Will it reach the point where a law firm actually makes the decision to lay off or fire a paralegal or an associate or legal assistant because they've just rolled out some new software? I don't know. Maybe. I think, I've heard that has happened in some industries, not the legal industry, but other industries around copywriting, around social media management, drafting things that ChatGPT or something like a ChatGPT can do a pretty damn good job of. I think we're pretty far off from that in the legal industry, but speaking as a business owner myself, I can absolutely see software, when we sit around a partner meeting, with the right software tool, we could probably decide, you know what, we don't need to hire another paralegal or another associate. We just need to leverage this new software tool that can automate a lot of these things for us. So I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation to be had. I mean, like you said, relationships are big. I actually feel like litigators who go to the courtroom, who, have to actually try cases and arbitrations, are a little more insulated from being replaced by generative AI than transactional attorneys. That's not to say that they're all going to be replaced either, but where I see another lane, and I'm not playing in this lane, but for your listeners and investors, maybe we should chat about chasing this. I don't know, but where I see it probably coming down right now, like I suspect this is happening today, is going to be in-house legal departments who used to outsource certain work to large firms at $500, $600, $900 an hour, who through a well-built software platform can begin to AI assist and answer a lot of those basic questions and draft a lot of the types of form documents that they need and really get almost the first answer through AI and let their own internal team evaluate, do we really need to escalate this to outside counsel or not? And so I think, we're going to see it with large companies that have their own in-house legal departments. I think you mentioned InsurTech earlier, that you had experience with InsurTech. I think the insurance market is likely going to start at some point dictating to the attorneys that they hire, hey, we're no longer going to pay you for drafting a deposition summary and you're taking 4 to 8 hours, whatever, to draft a summary, when you can just use this software and generate a summary in 15 seconds.
Yeah. Well, look, if any investors want to get in on that.
It's not an easy problem to solve, but it is a solvable problem. And I think one of the kicking around in my brain is how are law firms going to adapt? Currently for the world that I live in, personal injury defense, attorneys bill by the hour in 1/10 increments, 6-minute increments. What's going to happen when a law firm equipped with the right software goes to these companies and says, you know what, we're actually leveraging software now, and instead of charging you X $100 an hour, we can just flat fee this case, and we're going to leverage, in full disclosure, we're going to leverage the latest software to help us do this, but instead of not knowing how much it's going to cost you on this case, you're going to have certainty for your budgeting purposes that for every case you send us, this is going to be the cost. And, you can have pressure release valves built in, unless it goes to trial or unless it's a catastrophic fatality case where there's going to be 15 expert witnesses, right? You could build in, regardless of the type of case it is, you could have pressure release valves built into it where it converts to hourly. But I think that there's going to be an opportunity in the next 5 years to really leverage software to make that type of play. And maybe it'll finally be a chance for attorneys to not have to track their time in 1/10 of an hour, because I can tell you, Gavin, it's not that fun to track your time in 1/10 of an hour. It's kind of like it gets a little mind numbing and boring and drives attorneys a little bit crazy that they have to track their time with such precision just to earn a living. And I think if software kind of opens a door to alternative fee arrangements where they get graded more on the quality of the work product and delivering a result and less on precisely how many minutes were spent, that could be a good thing for attorneys.
I mean, other metrics or NPSs, repeatable business from the client served because you provided so much value and how quickly and efficient you were able to solve the case and the matter. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of, as you're talking there, it kind of made me think, are legal techs good for the legal industry? But of course they are. But it's playing devil's advocate a little bit, because it is, as you say, it's interesting times and uncertain times for the legal, whereas in insurance, it's been proven already over the past 10 years that insurtechs cannot overtake the incumbents, the carriers. They've got to be an ecosystem partner, and that's why the kind of D2C element of those companies that went public, Hippo, etc., kind of tanked a little bit, didn't they? Because, so it feels like they can't live without each other, but it kind of feels like maybe the legal industry's in for a bit of disruption, not always in the most positive way.
I mean, there could definitely be negative ramifications. I mean, don't get me wrong. First of all, what Skribe kind of stands for and represents is not replacing humans. We still have humans in the loop in the Skribe process. We think it is important to have a human touch when capturing testimony. But I think that there is a risk with automation and with AI that, particularly if it's not supervised by a smart attorney, what that could translate into for purposes of the quality of how a case gets defended or how a case gets prosecuted. Obviously there's always going to be, anytime someone's job feels threatened, like again, the port workers, the longshoremen currently on strike, that's a perfect example. Anytime someone feels like their job is threatened, their knee-jerk reaction is going to be strong opposition to whatever is threatening to take or replace their job. That's human nature, right? And so think back to horses and buggy whips back when automobiles first came out. Think back to taxi drivers fighting Uber when Uber first tried to launch into the market. You're always going to see some resistance. I think what we have to balance is doing it in a responsible way. And also, we can't just stop innovating just because we're worried about what the ramifications could be for certain jobs or certain roles. It's not to say that those jobs and roles are not important. What it means is there may be a new skill set or a new type of job, or something becomes a tool for someone so that they can do their job better. And so there's no perfect answer, but I think, putting up a stop sign and saying, no, we're not going to use technology because we're afraid that our jobs are going to get replaced by technology, I don't think that's the answer either.
No, it's not. But that brings us to the end of the episode. Karl, amazing insights on all things legal tech and where it could potentially be going. I know a lot of the listeners will get a lot of value from it. So thank you again for coming on and giving us your time.
Yeah, Gavin, thanks for having me on. And, for any of your listeners who are interested, Skribe is currently closing our seed round. Be happy to chat with you about our journey so far and where we want to take it. Legal testimony is just one piece of the puzzle of what we kind of hope to tackle in the legal world. But, I think I just saw a report that it was something like the legal tech market is almost a $1 trillion market. And it's just completely untapped right now. I mean, we're just scratching the surface of this market. So I think it is a really ripe opportunity for investors who are looking for new places to deploy capital, because all of the topics that we were talking about today, Gavin, are all presenting new opportunities to come into a market that is very outdated. Like, one last anecdote I'll leave your listeners with. Attorneys still use fax machines. Can you believe it? Like, we still, I keep telling my team we're going to get rid of the fax number. Oh no, we can't get rid of the fax number because some of our experts or certain courts still want to be able to fax us something. And there are so many other examples of that the people who are in the trenches, like my team, doing the work, there's so many things in this line of work that could be made better, not fully automated, but made better and more efficient through the use of technology. And I'm happy to get to play just a small part in it with Skribe, and really appreciate you having me on to share the story.
Yeah, look, man, I totally agree with you in terms of how hot legal tech is. It's why I'm doing this podcast, amongst other reasons. I want to shine a big light on it. I'm sure there's more people in your network that would love to come on. So again, thank you for coming on, Karl. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Gavin. Appreciate you having me.